remain unknown. We went through a challenging journey to rebuild, and since then, life has been great. We've had 2 more kids and achieved remarkable things in work and personal lives. The affair is now a distant memory after putting in the necessary work. Fast forward to the present, my wife has been grappling with life's challenges, including the typical COVID-related stress and a busy work life. Both of us have faced anxiety, and the past few months have been a struggle. I unexpectedly ended up in the hospital with a panic attack, revealing latent stress. Our busy jobs and life stresses have caused a slight emotional distance, though our physical intimacy remains strong. Recently, we entertained the idea of visiting a swingers club, not necessarily for activities, but to break free from routine and share some laughs. We've discussed potential exploration with other couples, but have never acted on it. While we opened a profile on a couples app out of curiosity, we haven't messaged anyone and aren't actively seeking such experiences. I've consistently emphasized that any exploration would be as a couple, with no intention of polyamorous situations. If any fun were to happen with like-minded friends, it would be spontaneous. On a side note, we have friends going through a rocky period in their marriage after the husband had an affair during a work trip. He now claims to be exploring polyamory, and his wife is admirably trying to navigate this new dynamic. I expressed skepticism about his excuse to my wife, but she sided with him, trying to understand his perspective. She even began reading Esther Perel's book, The State of Affairs: Rethinking Infidelity, which struck me as an interesting choice in our ongoing research on relationships. Complicating matters, my wife is set to move to another city for a 2-year military posting next year. We decided not to uproot the kids, who have finally settled after years of moving. Under ideal circumstances, managing a full-time job and household isn't a major issue, especially with flexible work opportunities. However, with the emotional strain and lack of intimacy, my wife suggested seeking marriage counseling for a health check and to navigate the challenges we're facing. We also considered discussing experimentation if the therapist deemed it appropriate. Our first counseling session went well, with open communication and homework on love languages. Feeling positive, I left for an overseas work trip, looking forward to our second session upon my return a few days ago. Meanwhile, my in-laws are staying with us for the last week of the school holidays. Initially a joy for the kids, but events will soon reveal why this arrangement becomes less ideal. During our second counseling session, we discussed improving emotional intimacy, but the atmosphere shifted drastically when my wife unexpectedly revealed she felt the only way to find fulfillment was through ethical non-monogamy. The therapist's stunned reaction mirrored my own. I entered a state of shock, recalling the emotions from the 2013 affair. The session became a blur, and my anxiety intensified as the reality of her posting loomed. It wasn't a casual suggestion. She wanted to explore relationships with others. The therapist suggested we talk after the session. Despite my seething anger, my wife agreed, but I declined, claiming work obligations. Shaking, I left for work, avoiding home until late. Unable to face it, I worked out until nightfall. Home, except for my kids, became an unwelcome space. The next day, I stayed at work, avoiding confrontation. Returning home was awkward, making small talk with in-laws while my marriage felt shattered. Communication between my wife and me is strained, and the tension is palpable. Adding to the complexity, there's another issue. When we created our separate but couple profile on the app, my wife seems unaware that my notifications reveal each time she logs in. Surprisingly, she's logging in multiple times a day. Given the app's niche nature and our city's size, where new profiles aren't numerous, her frequent logins raise concerns. While I can differentiate curiosity from actual engagement, the frequency, coupled with recent revelations, is troubling. She's been on it 3 times in the last 12 hours alone. This discovery led to a mini panic attack in the car, prompting a visit to the doctor, an ex-military professional who prescribed anti-anxiety medication. Despite potential side effects, I plan to start the medication course on Saturday. Adding frustration, she dropped this bombshell at an incredibly inconvenient time, with her parents in the house. Now I'm expected to navigate this emotional turmoil while maintaining composure. Despite her request for a conversation tonight, I declined. My anger is overwhelming. To be frank, the push for marriage counseling feels like a means for her to justify dropping this bomb. She appears more invested in this than I am and struggles to grasp my reservations and well-defined boundaries. During the session, I likened it to being asked to move to Mongolia when I have no interest or desire to do so, comparing it to trying to fall in love with a culture that holds no appeal for me, using a peculiar metaphor. The therapist now wants to see us individually, which, from my understanding, usually suggests things have spiraled out of control and need closer examination. Feeling lost, tomorrow is Friday, and she plans to go out with friends in the evening. Considering leaving early to avoid the awkwardness, I'm strongly considering packing a bag and taking a few days away. My body is urging me to do so. Any advice from those who've been through similar experiences or any guidance would be appreciated. Thanks for listening. Getting this off my chest helps. Update. I want to assure you that I'll address specific responses when I have the time to gather my thoughts tonight, as my wife will be out at the football with her course members. Regarding the theoretical aspect, I understand the confusion about considering swinging, given our history 9 years ago. We both share a sexually open mindset, and within agreed and respected boundaries, we believed it could be navigated maturely. This has only been discussed as a voiced fantasy. Nothing has been put into action. The idea of pursuing external relationships or dates has never been on the table, and my wife is aware of my emotional boundaries. Now, onto the practical side. I'm still shaken with anger and panic as I write this a day and a half later. I haven't spoken to my wife because I fear an explosive tirade in front of her conservative parents, who are leaving tomorrow, allowing me to tough it out. Someone mentioned Esther P., the writer my wife has been reading. After some research, it seems she heavily leans toward validating poly lifestyles as a potential solution for marriages rocked by affairs. Personally, I'm not buying into that perspective. The marriage counseling push feels like a manipulation, confirming fears I dismissed as paranoid remnants from 2013. It seems the urgency to bring everything to light is a setup for an emotional gap year in her new job. Despite voicing concerns about potential resentment, especially with her living in a male-dominant work field while I manage the household, I was assured we could work through it. This recent revelation doesn't instill confidence, even in the most supportive environment. Trust isn't a current concern about her going out this weekend. My investigative instincts kicked in after the last affair, and there's no evidence suggesting she's meeting someone. What infuriates me most is the timing dumping this on me when I can do nothing about it with her parents in the house. It's exacerbated by exhaustion from post-COVID society, increased work demands, and a recent anxiety disorder diagnosis with accompanying medication. I'm particularly upset that while I'm clearly angry and hurting, she's casually exploring new possibilities on the app. That, more than anything, is the source of my frustration. Despite it all, I won't be broken. I'm determined to deal with this head-on. Update. Last night, she went to the football with her colleagues. Before leaving, she messaged me, offering to stay home for a talk. However, I noticed she logged into the app twice in the next hour, fueling my doubts. Smiling for the in-laws, I kept quiet, feeling panic and metaphorical nails in my heart. She returned early, and we went to bed without talking. Taking a sleeping pill, I slept until 9:30 a.m. Once the in-laws left, we addressed the situation. I expressed 1. Resentment and anger for the poorly timed revelation with her parents present, leaving me unable to handle it appropriately. 2. Requested her phone and asked her to open the app. Her face turned ashen. Okay, well, to let you know, I have been chatting with some people on there. Me. Enter D-Day fight and flight mode, reminiscent of 2013. Me. Open it, now! She had private messages with up to 6 people, all married, supposedly looking for another couple. There were no explicit content or dick pics, mostly discussions about getting into the lifestyle. However, she shared headshots of her face. One guy asked for her phone number, and another suggested meeting for a drink. Realistically, she's 2 weeks away from cheating, but given the circumstances, it's already a form of betrayal. At this point, I'm furious. The entire premise was that exploring this would be a mutual endeavor, potentially something we did together. There was never an agreement to message people behind each other's backs. I'm now convinced, whether rightly or wrongly, that I've been played regarding the marriage counseling. Even if that's not the case, it certainly feels that way. It could explain the bombshell, and she's smart enough to know that dropping this with her in-laws in town was not the right time. Time pressure is evident. I erupted and the kids heard most of it. Now I'm at a loss on what to do. She claims nothing significant would come of this, and that it was merely an ego boost. Unfortunately, that was the same excuse I got last time, and something did come of it. I feel completely lost and have been in tears all morning. While we've been emotionally distant, partly as a defense mechanism due to past events, she doesn't see this reaction as a deal-breaker compared to others. However, I can't reconcile it. Accessing the app and engaging in personal, even if not explicitly sexual, conversations with others during marriage counseling while your husband is clearly in emotional turmoil feels like utter contempt for the marriage. It's just beyond comprehension. Many of you have likely experienced a similar feeling, as have I. I had a screaming rant at her, but then I started the antidepressant course yesterday as per medical advice, and ultimately the stuff has worked like low-range ecstasy due to the slow serotonin release. I couldn't feel anger. I felt so detached. At one point I actually felt carefree. I also note that's what I should not be at the moment. I read the message log from the app. It is all innocuous, but the fact she didn't tell me about it is the real kicker, and it is a boundary trampled at best, and evidence of a propensity to have an EA++ if it went further. I'm just so tired, and I don't want to lose my family. I'm hoping MC will help get to the bottom of this. Until then, I'm a leaf in a storm. One thing I do know, trust is gone. Again. I'm feeling better after talking to her, compared to Saturday when I discovered the app conversations and finally addressed her comments in the marriage counseling session on Wednesday. However, there's a significant amount of work ahead. She admitted that despite having no intention to meet the people she was chatting with, she knew I wouldn't have approved, even from a curiosity standpoint. This morning she shared that she felt desperate about improving our emotional connection, seeing this as a destructive way to trigger a catalyst. Dropping it in the counseling session was her misguided attempt to be heard or a cry for help. I can understand to a certain point, but it's still challenging. I refuse to live in fear of potential infidelity just because things might not be perfect in our marriage. And her go-to reaction is threatening to jeopardize the relationship through external emotional validation. I'm currently torn between divorce, D, or reconciliation, R, pending further sessions with the marriage counselor. Another factor is that my anti-anxiety medication is keeping me surprisingly calm and collected. I should be angrier, but it's not there, creating a disconcerting feeling on its own. Update. I appreciate you checking in, and I understand the need for some time to process everything. Individual counseling, I see, went well. It was enlightening and helpful. I apologized to the therapist for the bombshell, but he reassured me that he doesn't conform to being shocked by deviations outside of normal social constructs. The main takeaways from the session were: 1. The therapist questioned if I truly believed she wants another relationship. He leaned towards thinking not. I expressed my uncertainty, leaning 30-70 on her being serious, given her past behavior. 2. He explained that my hesitancy to be emotionally open with my wife might stem from the trust broken 9 years ago. Coming from a background where my father cheated on my mother and they divorced, the impact is likely magnified. Even if my wife's behavior was a cry for help, it would likely have a detrimental effect. 3. I mentioned I couldn't be in a relationship where her happiness variations might lead to cheating or, equally concerning, develop paranoia as a defense mechanism. His response was, You must realize that this is her problem. Nothing you can do will change her behavior unless she sets boundaries and changes it herself. You are not responsible for her poor choices. It's genuinely disheartening to find myself in a position where my wife interprets my openness to perhaps entertaining harmless, consensual fun as giving her the green light to pursue emotional relationships with others. The fact that this revelation was dropped in marriage counseling, knowing I would have to navigate it with visitors, family in the house for the next 4 days, adds another layer of frustration. When I asked her about starting conversations on the app without my knowledge, her response was, "It was just boredom. I was interested in learning about people's journeys." However, my concerns persist because 1. She was reading books open to this lifestyle. 2. She was genuinely excited about talking to people in the poly lifestyle, finding their stories fascinating, though she claims no physical meetings or contacts beyond the app, now deleted. 3. She knew I disapproved of our friend's excuse post affair, claiming to be truly poly, a disagreement we had previously. Her statement now, "It was all a misunderstanding. I don't want that at all," doesn't instill much confidence. I sense I might be entering the anger phase of dealing with this situation. I won't go through this again for a third time if she decides I haven't met some arbitrary level of romance, emotional availability. Every marriage experiences ups and downs. The answer isn't dropping a nuclear bomb. With her away for a week for work, I have time to think, and she has been checking in nightly. More to ponder regardless. Update. I apologize for the lack of updates. Work has been challenging, and my anti-anxiety meds have left me feeling down. Surprisingly, they seem to induce apathy rather than improvement. To be honest, I've had 2 IC sessions over the last few weeks, and while I acknowledge areas to work on, it doesn't warrant the current mess. Yes, there are times I've been emotionally unavailable. Welcome to a long-term marriage. However, resorting to the idea of dating someone else when annoyed isn't a common response for most people. Today, we had a combined MC session, and to be honest, it didn't go well. My wife has mentioned multiple times that the poly angle was a cry for help or a desperate attempt to set fire to a situation. When she speaks of desperation, I struggle to understand it. I'm an active father to our 3 kids, work hard, handle household tasks, manage finances, stay in shape, and provide more than enough income. I have my faults, but I'm not a dipshit. In the session, the MC asked what I am feeling, and I stated that I don't feel safe. I'm uncertain whether my wife is genuinely interested in being poly or if it's just a cry for help. I express that I can't be in a marriage living under a non-monogamous guillotine, waiting to fall whenever my wife might feel aggrieved. The MC asks my wife if even if things improve, the desire for another relationship would persist. She responds with, "I don't know yet." I express my discomfort with the idea of an ongoing emotional relationship outside the marriage, and she responds, "Well, we might be at an impasse." She then delves into monogamy being a traditional construct, and how, due to advances in feminism, she doesn't want to feel trapped. I express confusion, emphasizing that monogamy is arguable as the norm and not a patriarchal construct aimed at keeping women as chattel. It feels like this is becoming less about our marriage and more of a gender crusade. It's ironic. As soon as we left the session, we talked in the car park. I got well, I have no intention of seeing someone else. But as my psychologist told me, we don't have to make a decision. We can just see how it goes. I don't want to see how it goes. At 42, I want my wife to not feel tempted to stray. Then she says, "We still haven't talked about moving interstate," to which I replied that we had, and that my boss was already happy for me to work in the office there. Suddenly it's, "Well, look, I'm going anyway, and we need to work out whether it's worth moving the entire family logistically." So there we have it. It appears, at least at a cursory glance, like me and the kids moving with her are going to cramp her style. I said as much, and she said, "No, not at all." I asked her to truthfully tell me what advice her friends would give her, If it was me who told her that I was unhappy, open to seeing other people, and also sketchy about her moving interstate with me for 2 years. Exactly. But here's the thing. She's pleading for me to make it work and says she wants to spend her life with me. How? Anyway, she's all touchy-feely and wants to know why I'm feeling down tonight. Is she serious? Update. I've been trying to stay afloat with everything, particularly managing the kids and work, while desperately avoiding screaming at my wife in sheer frustration. You might find this both amusing and unsurprising given our recent saga. In the past week, something just didn't sit right with me regarding the polybomb dropped in MC. When she mentioned her workmate friend's marriage falling apart due to a failed polyamory experiment 2 weeks ago, it all clicked. She also revealed that she was meeting said workmate for coffee because he was upset about his marriage problems. Since my wife's 2013 affair, I've been extra vigilant about male workmates where boundaries might blur. Though she works in a male-dominated industry, I maintain a realistic perspective on interactions. However, she knows that not maintaining boundaries led to the last affair. In the context of recent weeks, my spidey sense started tingling. I feel guilty about it, but the other night I went through her phone. For someone she's been friends with, there's a distinct lack of messages between them. In fact, there are significant multi-month gaps in their messaging history. Red flag number 1. My heart starts racing. Again, feeling guilty and embracing the idea that girls tell their friends everything, I scan her conversations with her best friend in another city. It's disheartening. I come across as quite the jerk. My hobbies annoy her. Putting together an office chair in the lounge room is a source of irritation. While we all vent about our significant others from time to time, this is almost corrosive. I never speak about her in this manner. When I went overseas for work, she wrote, "I'm relieved he's gone, to tell you the truth." I had no clue she felt this way. It gets worse. She's still upset that I character assassinated her during the blow-up of the 2013 affair. By that, she means I shared what was going on with a few people. I had to tell her parents because she wouldn't stop talking to the affair partner. I had to tell a couple of workmates because I was in tears at my desk. Apparently, I'm a jerk because a few people in our industry might have found out about it, despite the affair occurring in the workplace. Wow. She confessed to her friend that dropping the polybomb was a way to set off a firecracker as a call for help. But wait, there's more. Let's call her friend B. I stumble upon an interesting conversation from a few weeks ago. They're discussing a TV show they're watching. In Australia, it's common slang to refer to someone as old mate, a generic term for someone you don't know. Anyway, wife. Old mate would love this show. B. Herthalo? Wife. No. The ellipsis speaks volumes. B. O. B. There are so many old mates you refer to. She's saying, you call everyone old mate. Who are you referring to? Wife. Most recent old mate. B. Which you've never entirely divulged deets on. But I'm okay with that. Wife. You know me well enough. This is infuriating. I reach a boiling point. I screenshot the conversation and confront her in person. She shuts down, saying, I don't want to talk about this. I'm tired. Eventually, I get an explanation, which I don't believe at this point. Supposedly, she realized their conversations were crossing familiarity boundaries, and she, quote, pulled back from it. I question why her friend, living 300 kilometers away, knows this guy is significant in some way if nothing happened. Her response revolves around, she knows he worked with me and we discussed our marriages. I press about the deleted messages. We were discussing you and my unhappiness, and I know that you reading that would hurt you. Oh, you mean the exactly 0 times I've checked your phone? I suggest it's an emotional affair in the workplace, the very same thing that happened last time. She downplays it, saying, it's not like that. If it was an affair, he certainly wasn't privy to it. She's shrugging this off like it's nothing, as if opening up to someone of the opposite sex that you are feeling guilty about isn't an affair. I'm so done with this. I'll never find out the truth. I'm seriously contemplating contacting this guy's wife. I deeply suspect their marriage falling apart probably has more to do with my wife than she'd like to admit. I'm livid but sadly not surprised. It's funny how my wife's newfound interest in polyamory coincides with all this. Bloody hell. I meticulously examined her messaging history last night. It's evident it was an emotional affair, EA. While I don't believe it escalated to a physical affair, PA, the nature doesn't suggest that. Yet, he seemingly mentored her into the poly lifestyle, showcasing its potential. Regardless, she experienced guilt, and since I was unaware, it qualifies as an affair. With individual and joint MC sessions this week, I'm eager to hear the therapist's perspective considering the latest revelations. I'm strongly inclined toward divorce. Last night, I delivered a reality check. This EA likely cost our marriage. Financially, it will entail substantial losses. Her coveted posting to the other city is likely off due to custody issues. Our daughters will have tough questions in the future, likely viewing her unfavorably. Our comfortable combined income will drastically decrease, and she might end up paying me child support if she takes the posting. Hopefully this serves as a wake-up call. Update. I reached a breaking point and told her to leave, discarding my wedding band in frustration. Despite being almost certain there was no physical affair, the emotional connections, including with the guy from her workplace and others on the app, clearly fall into the emotional affair, EA category. She admitted to relying on him instead of coming to me with marital issues. In my recent individual counseling session, I detailed the events of going through her phone, and even the therapist expressed shock, acknowledging the complexity of the situation. I depart for Canada on Saturday for a work assignment, using the time to contemplate my decisions. My wife, recognizing the gravity of the situation, offered a mixed message. Whatever happens, you're a brilliant man, and you'll be okay. My retort about navigating the local Tinder scene may not have been my finest moment. Laughter might be the best response in this chaos. Update. I know it's been a while since my last update, but work has kept me incredibly busy. And well, that work trip to Canada. It got derailed by me catching COVID just 3 days before I was supposed to fly out. Shakes fist at the uncaring moon. Now that the initial crisis has passed, I find myself simmering with rage over the audacity of the situation. My wayward wife, has tried to downplay it, citing being in a tough mental state a few months ago. Here are the facts. 1. She was messaging her poly workmate every day for months. While not explicitly damning, it was overly familiar and, at the very least, too reliant on him, resembling an emotional affair, EA. Calling him babe and ending messages with an X. Spare me. There was even a time she went to a SSX shop to buy a toy for us and messaged him about it. Casual topics with a totally platonic workmate, right? It too. Despite her claims that the poly thing was likely just a cry for help in the marriage, it doesn't erase the fact that she extensively researched a poly book called Rethinking Affairs, actively engaged with poly people on a dating app, and coincidentally, her workmate happened to be poly. Yeah, and I was born yesterday too. Despite shouldering my responsibilities at home cooking, cleaning, working full-time, actively parenting, and even single parenting while she pursued military courses, I find myself being criticized to her friend. The fact that her friend was aware of this guy's significance, yet my wife hadn't shared the details, infuriates me. How can someone endorse character assassination of a friend's husband and then seek details of their suspected affair partner? The audacity! I'm grappling with this anger. My wife insists on moving for a significant posting in 6 months, but she can't expect me to embrace single parenthood for nearly 2 years, with a near 99% risk of her reverting to a character flaw she's demonstrated twice in a decade. The irony of blaming our latest crisis on feeling emotionally disconnected while she happily disconnected from me for 2 years is almost laughable if it weren't so hypocritical. I've read and appreciated all the advice on this page. Thank you for checking in.